This is WWE Hall of Famer Tito Santana, and you are watching When It Was Real with noted wrestling historian, author, actor, and wrestling manager Nikita Breznikov, and pro wrestling author and podcaster Benny Scala. Found only on the Playa Entertainment Network. Arriba!
Thank you, Tito. Well, good evening, folks, and welcome back to When It Was Real, the show that celebrated that magical time when professional wrestling was so real to us. Now, I'm just some kid online at the ticket booth at the Nassau Coliseum, but this other guy, he's the real deal. He's the one and only Nikita Breznikov. Nikita, how are you, my friend?
Well, I'm doing great. Thank you, Benny, and thank you to all of the wonderful family we have out there it's showing. Your appreciation of what Benny and I are doing, it's showing. And believe me, we love it. We love doing it. And we're happy to see that it's reaching the masses.
Amen to that. Well, Nikita, tonight's going to be a really special episode. This is the one that I've been waiting for, and I think a lot of people have been waiting for this. But like I said to you before backstage, I think it's a tribute to how great wrestling was back then, that we could wait 7 whole months. There were so many other great stars to cover before we finally got to the living legend, Bruno Sammartino. But you remember that song by the Chambers Brothers, The Time Has Come Today? 1968.
Yeah, I've heard it.
Yeah, the time has come today to talk about the greatest, Bruno Sammartino.
There you go. But see, I'm a little bit goofy in the head. I'm like Sheldon on Big Bang Theory. I like to tie them in with dates. So with yesterday being the anniversary of the Shea Showdown, September the 30th of 72, Bruno and Pedro, and Roberto Clemente's 3,000th hit, and his last appearance forever, unfortunately.
That's right. Oh, yeah. It was at Three Rivers, right?
They were in Pittsburgh, yeah.
Against the Mets. I think it was against John Matlack of the Mets.
It was against the Mets because people, the company was afraid that a lot of New York would stay home. It was a shitty night, too. It was a little bit chillier than normal, even though, late September could be anything. And they're lucky it didn't rain. But it was like, a lot of people wanted to see Clemente's 3,000th hit. So it was like anything else. It's risky.
Yeah. Amazing ball player. One of the best ever. To me, one of the best right fielders. That arm, man, what a cannon.
Well, he took Pittsburgh to the World Series in 71 against the Orioles. So he made the difference.
Yeah. I'm still smarting from the 1960 series. I mean, I think the Yankees outscored the Pirates like 180-3, but somehow they beat the Yankees 4-3. Cost Casey Stengel his job. Ended an era, yeah. I mean, imagine winning 7 world championships in 12 years and then still getting fired.
Yes, people, you're listening to wrestling, but Benny and I are baseball people.
Oh,
too.
yeah, we got to sneak it in there. So, Nikita, I want to do a double toast. The first toast I wanted to do for all our listeners because we, as of yesterday, are number 105 on Podchaser, the Apple Podcast United States Sports Entertainment Wrestling chart. And maybe 105 doesn't sound like a big deal, but I will tell you that there are literally thousands and thousands and thousands of wrestling podcasts out there. And to be in the chart at any number is a big deal. And, when I saw who, we were right next to Arn Anderson, Jeff Jarrett. I mean, these are people who, were in the business. I mean, Nikita was in the business, but I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, we're swimming with the big boys.
Not like them, but yes. Yeah, they're the kings.
And we have you guys to thank for it, all the listeners out there. So that's our first toast. Here's to our listeners.
Beautiful.
And then, of course, to the one and only, my hero, the living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Oh, Bruno.
And
people.
Again, go ahead, Nikita. Sorry.
It's not that we're blowing our own horn, but Benny and I got to know Bruno outside of the squared circle, and he was a wonderful person. He was not like, hey, I'm king shit and you can't approach me. He was a damn nice guy.
I literally sat 7 feet from him on December the 16th, 2017, eating Christmas dinner at Rico's Italian restaurant in Pittsburgh. And when I mean, besides my kids being born, that was probably the greatest night of my entire life. And they tell you be careful when you meet your heroes because you may be disappointed. And it was the polar opposite. I mean, he could not have been nicer and more gracious and classier. And he made me feel like I belong there.
You know, that's such a true statement because it's happened to so many times. I never had that bad experience. Adam West, he was just wonderful. Other people I've met through the years, Nichelle Nichols. But when Nikolai was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2005, you know, Stallone, he did Hogan. And of course, he's there. And everybody was told, don't look at him, don't approach him, Stallone. You know, it's like, what the fuck, man? Does this guy not have a pair of pants that he puts on? Does he not put shoes on and walk around? But whatever. He's a midget anyway, so who cares? Maybe Hogan loved him, but I had no use for the goof.
But it was such a great evening. I'll treasure that always. And it's what got me into writing, which got me onto a podcast, which got me onto a different podcast, which, eventually led to this. So it's funny how, the whole journey of life, how it works.
I was telling my wife, Victoria, that today, and it was like, I'd have never believed any of this. Never.
No.
If you had told me, it's like, nah, get out of town. So here we are. And now we are going to spread the news.
Right.
Please.
Tom Jones.
He wasn't a continental nobleman. Well, he was. I mean, he truly, he was definitely Italiano, without a doubt. Benny, do you want to give a quick background of the personal side of Bruno?
I want to say, like, when you think about, what Bruno was, and you think about where he came from, born in Italy, when he was 9 or 10, the Germans raided his town of Pizziferrato, Italy, so much so that he and his family had to live in the mountains. Vallaraka, I think is what he called it, for like a year and a half. This is like a young kid had to eat snow and dandelions to survive. 2 of his siblings passed away at a very young age. And his mom, he was very, very sick with rheumatic fever. His mom attached leeches to him. You talk about old school Italian medicine, right? To keep him alive. But he wasn't able to pass the physical to come to the United States until he was 14, because his dad had been here, in the States for years and years in Pittsburgh, working and saving up the American dream, right? And, so Bruno comes here at 14, speaks no English, 83 pounds, which for at 14 years old is not, that's the old 90-pound weakling, right? Or less 7. And got picked on at school because of, I guess, his appearance and his lack of English, got beat up. And then one day, one of his friends introduced him to I think it was the Young Men's Hebrew Association, like the YMCA, but the Jewish version. He saw the weights there, and he said, the minute I saw them, I knew that there was something good in it for me. And God, the rest is history, right?
But he had to have that natural strength, without a doubt. Like Nicola, you had to have it in you. But I got to say one quick thing, Benny. His mom was wounded by the Germans as well. She snuck down at night to try to get food for the kids.
Yeah, they had like all kinds of provisions in their basement, like potatoes and corn and stuff like that. And I guess once every couple of weeks, the mom would literally walk down the mountain. And I think it took her like a day and a half to make the round trip. And she would sneak into the house and bring back, and the 3 kids who were still alive, Bruno and his brother and sister, would wait at the foot of the mountain for the mom to come back with food. And I believe one time she actually got shot.
Yeah, she took a round one night. It was years later, and Bruno was telling the story, and he started to tear up and he said, "Look at me, big wrestler, and I'm still crying about my mom." And it's like, hey, Bruno, I mean, come on, that's mom. I know how it's. Believe me, it's from the heart. If we didn't love, we certainly wouldn't care. So it's beautiful. Let it fly, Daddy. Let it fly.
I think that speaks volumes as to what kind of man he was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he said his mom
When you would see him like in the 60s, even years later, but when he would wear a suit and it looked like I don't know, that they painted it on him, then you got an idea just what a gorilla, because Johnny Valiant used to say he's like a gorilla. When he grabs onto you, he could probably crush your hand. And it's like, wow, yeah, you've seen it many times. And here's a guy, and we'll get into it, that came back in 2 months from a broken neck, 3 ruptured vertebrae. Who on this earth can do that? Only Bruno.
Yeah. 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 So I think what happened was he won a powerlifting contest in Oklahoma, and he came back to Pittsburgh, and I believe Bob Prince, who was the announcer for the Pirates, had a TV show, and somehow Bruno got invited to do some feats of strength, and Rudy Miller, who was worked for Capital Wrestling for Vince Sr., saw him. I guess spoke to Vince Sr. about him, and then I guess they contacted Bruno. They flew him to DC. They had him, and I guess Bruno had wrestled at Penn State. Not he was in high school, but he would go there and wrestle against the college kids.
Right.
And so I guess he made a good accounting for himself, and so they gave him a shot. I think it was in 1959 is when he started.
Yes. Now, here's a little history. Bear with us tonight, people. I know we're more of a 70s-oriented show, but we're going to cover some of Bruno in the 60s. And let me take you back to how it all began and what I believe is a controversial issue that I'm going to probably give you a surprise answer to. On January 24th of 63 in Toronto, Lou Thesz defeated Buddy Rogers, who was the NWA champion. Now, it was a one-fall match. So Vince Sr. and Toots Mondt, if anybody's ever heard that name, and a guy named Fred Kohler, who was running Chicago, they weren't happy with it. You should do 2 out of 3 fall. That's the way it was back then. And prior to that, on January the 16th in Amarillo, Thesz had been soundly defeated by Dory Funk Sr. So it's like, this doesn't look good. We don't like it. So they branched off. That's when they said, we're no longer NWA. And they created the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Now, on April 11th, Willie Gilzenberg on television from D.C. handed Buddy Rogers a belt. And it was from a tournament held in where else, Benny?
Rio.
Rio, you got it, buddy. So it's like, holy shit, with that Rio de Janeiro, because who the hell can justify it, verify it, or dispute it? So, okay, so the Worldwide Wrestling Federation's created. And lo and behold, right around April 25th, which is the date the Worldwide Wrestling Federation names Rogers as the official champion. But my information comes from a different source. Then Buddy Rogers has a mild heart attack. That was verified. But the match with Bruno on January the 24th, I don't know. You hear a couple of different versions. You see the picture, 63 seconds, right? He's got the backbreaker, the over-the-shoulder backbreaker. 48 seconds. I'm sorry, 48 seconds. And you see Rogers holding his chest. And it's like, okay, it could be from. In fact, I just watched Victoria and I watched the Law and Order episode a couple of nights ago where somebody's chest was crushed. And they said, it could happen. And it's like, I told her, I said, that's what the hell a bear hug or a backbreaker like that over the shoulder does.
Right.
You can't get compressed. If you get compressed, you can't breathe. Your lungs can't expand, which is what you need to do. And enough pressure is going to do some serious damage. So with that, I mean, if they just started a new organization, I can't see them sending this young guy in there and say, just go to it, tear him up. It's like, I think it was controlled. I think Rogers, he was in poor health, and they said, look, we got to do this quick, because the state athletic commission probably said, we're going to be timing you, and we're going to give you maybe 2 minutes tops, and then we're going to pull it. So it's like, get in there, get it done, get the belt on Bruno, get his hand up, and then we're off to the races. What do you think, Benny? We've heard different versions.
I've never heard it, broken down that way, but that actually makes a lot of sense, because when you were speaking, my first thought was, what would Dr. Frank say about this? Like, would they have passed Rogers? But maybe they would have said, look, we know that you're not in the best of health. We'll give you, like you said, we'll give you a couple of minutes. This has got to be quick. Now, Bruno always maintained that, that Rogers thought he was going over that night. But I'm wondering if that was just Bruno being Bruno and maintaining kayfabe.
I love the guy, Bruno. But when you read his first book, it's like, Bruno, come on. I mean, when I lost the Koloff, I had separated shoulder. We'll talk about that. And then Superstar had his feet on the ropes. It's like, Bruno, come on.
21st century.
And then Sal said, we got to redo this book. And it's got to be what it is. We can't hide this anymore. So I truly believe, could Bruno have done that? Sure. He'd have broke Buddy Rogers in half, no question. And Rogers was a great wrestler, but he wasn't that strong like that. So, yeah, if they had turned Bruno loose, it could have ended that way. Like I've said many times, with these guys, they are, as they were described by Cal Rudman, as Klingons. And it seems that way. If you ever watch Star Trek, I was never a fan, but Victoria got me watching it. It's like, yeah, they're like extra strong, like double the normal strength of a human. That's what wrestlers are like. And they could kill each other, really, if you let them go at it. But, you got to work every night, and you got to work tomorrow night. So it's like, make it look good, but don't destroy each other, because there goes the cash box at the door. So we get this new young Italian champion. And this is what I'm going to go by for the 60s, people. The history of Madison Square Garden. I'm not going to read everything, because it's not our style. But here are some of Bruno's accomplishments when he became champion. I mean, without a doubt, a new company, they would have had to believed in him, because there was a lot of money on the line. Because can you imagine, Benny, that you're starting a new organization and you're breaking away, kind of like what we had, right? We were tied in with somebody, and, they had a big network of 25,000 subscribers. And now here we are, we're starting out from day one, number one subscriber. Thank you. That's great. We appreciate it. But they had to believe in who he was. And he goes on with the great Mortier. Remember Hans Mortier with that little cap?
Oh, yeah, managed by, I believe he was managed by Wild Red Berry.
Wild Red Berry. And I'm looking at some of these clippings. Bruno Sammartino and Bobo Brazil against Buddy Rogers and Gorilla Monsoon. Rogers came back after he healed. And it's like, wow. Bruno, he just wrestled so many people. And for a while there, though, you have to know the Garden was not monthly. Bruno and Bobo, they drew with Mortier. Oh, actually, you see now, that was the advertisement. Mortier was a sub for Buddy Rogers with Gorilla, and he wrestled with Gorilla Monsoon.
I used to love that leather helmet that he wore.
Yeah, I don't know what the significance. I guess that's something that the athletes in Germany wore. But I know Hans Mortier, he was like a power lifter too. He was like
he
a
was
Mr.
a bodybuilder, a professional bodybuilder. I think he was from Holland.
Yes, he had that bodybuilder physique without a doubt. Then here you go, December 16th of 63, Dr. Jerry Graham. And it's like the beginning of the Graham legacy for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, at least. And then Bruno wrestled with him a few different times. Shoei Baba, he comes to Madison Square Garden. And then the draw with Gorilla Monsoon, May 11th of 64. 70 minutes they went. For a Gorilla Monsoon, I mean, he was right at that 400-pound mark. And if you ever talk to the man, it's like, you should have seen my food bill. You think it's cheap to maintain this? And you had to maintain it. Like Calhoun, we talked when we covered him.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot of groceries.
Yeah, well, at that, and he ended up in a trailer park at the end of his life. And, he's like, yeah, back in the 50s, I was making a couple $100,000 a year in the 60s, which is no chump change today. But back then, you're living like royalty. But, when you're that kind of size, it's pretty tough. So Bruno and Monsoon, Freddie Blassie, July 11th of 64. Waldo Von Erich, who wrestled Bruno the most in Madison Square Garden. Believe it or not, people, that's the guy that holds the record. So they go all the way back to August 22nd of 64. So they had 3 in a row with Waldo. And I mean, that was a natural pairing, right? After Bruno got out and told the story, like Benny just described, what happened with the Italians and the Germans. And it was like, and look, everything is over with people. Everybody's friends. Everything's fine. But it was good box office to push that Nazi gimmick. And that wasn't, they were saying, somebody that made good Wiener Schnitzel or, had a good beer or anything like that. These were the Nazi Germans they were talking about when they were portray, like Waldo Von Erich. He had all of the gimmick. He had the paraphernalia, the German helmet. He had the swastika thing. Had the riding crop. He looked great. Well, he believed it too. Nikolai used to tell me, he was into that shit. So it was like, it worked. Because if you don't believe it, as I was told by so many of these, nobody else will. Cowboy Bill Watts, the Graham brothers. Holy mackerel. Bruno and Cowboy Watts against the Graham brothers. Crazy Luke and Dr. Jerry. There's that Crazy Luke again. My God. He goes all the way back to the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I mean, he was, he's still around, in the mid to late 70s?
78 was his last run.
Yeah.
I mean, what was it? October 23rd. No, he was even November show. Yeah, Crazy Luke was hanging around, and he was methodical, as Vince would describe it, which meant if he went any slower, he'd be going backwards. But he was cool. You loved his goofy gimmick. And there you go. Bruno against Tarzan Tyler. This was before Graham and Tyler, September 27th of 65. But look at that again, Tarzan Tyler. Then he's going to come back a few years later, and the name we all love, Baron Mikhail Cicluna, January 24th, 1968, 12,354. That was fine. Even though they held 22,000, that was about normal. 13,000, 10,000 a month before with other people. Bruno beat him by DQ in 25 minutes. Comes back the next month to beat him again. Attendance was up higher. Prince Iokea, who would later become King Curtis.
Before he got crowned king.
Before he got the crowning. Tank Morgan. Anybody remember Tank Morgan? Toro Ortega. Hey, Luis Cerdan. He was making some appearances. And here's Spiros Arion making some appearances, also known as Andreas Lambericus.
He was the Golden Greek back then before he became the Iron Greek.
He was golden in those days, without a doubt. And he and Bruno, let me go through because I know they teamed up many, many times. And I think we covered that when we did Spiros Arion, but still, that was a long time ago. There's Tanaka, June 19th of 67. And then Bruno and Arion beat Monsoon and Tanaka, August 21st of 67. Is everybody okay with this? Just sing out the Benny if you want me to skip over it, because I think this is important. I think
there's some of the listeners were around back then. I know I was.
There's your Kentucky Butcher, March 11th of 68.
Quinn, managed
George
by
the Animal Steel. A 50-minute, 51-second draw on May the 20th of 68. How many people seen George Steele go more than 15 minutes? But he did it. Came back the next month. Ernie Ladd, July 13th of 68. The Big Cat. And then Bruno and Victor Rivera beat Monsoon and Tanaka, August 17th of 68. Bruno beat Rocky Fitzpatrick September 23rd of
Bob
68.
Orton.
The Sheik, the
Oh, the
original
Sheik.
Sheik. The Ed Farhat, not our buddy Cosgrove. October 21st of 68. And they came back 3 times, Bruno and the Sheik, at the Garden. And then Kowalski gets in there. Kowalski and Monsoon beat Bruno and Victor. Then Bruno has singles with Kowalski. And as we go on, actually, he wrestled with Victor quite a few times. That's amazing. And I'll tell you what we're going to these days soon, we're going to do Victor Rivera. I'm working on something with Dr. Mike Lano, if anybody knows who Dr. Mike is,
Dr.
and
Mike,
Evan
yeah.
Ginsberg. And he knew Victor pretty well. Knew of him because Dr. Mike covered LA extensively with Tolis and people like that. But in my opinion, I really think Victor Rivera was destined to get what Pedro Morales got, because Pedro was no young
I've
guy.
wondered for years. Absolutely.
Yeah, but Victor had some demons. Not that any of us are without them, but I don't know. His seemed to overwhelm him at times.
When I started watching in early '68, he was the solid number 2 babyface.
Well, somebody brought up a point, sort of along those same lines, with Jimmy Snuka for some of the posts that I make on my daily posts or my Facebook page, and they said, how about Jimmy Snuka? Maybe he could have been champion. And I said it's in Backlund's book. Backlund said the old man actually approached him one day and said, Bobby, it's a thought. Talking about Jimmy Snuka maybe putting the belt on him. What are your feelings? And Backlund said, look, no hard feelings that I'll give up the belt or anything like that, but you got to think of his outside of the ring activity and how he portrays the company. Because you look at Backlund, look at Bruno, look at Pedro, always in a suit. Superstar was not a suit and tie kind of guy. He was cool, so that was acceptable. But the face champions, they were always dressed like they were going to go meet the president. They were dressed immaculately. And they acted that way, without a doubt. So, as it goes on, Crusher Verdue, blah, blah, blah. And, Oscar Verdue was a good guy, solid, almost 300-pounder. Problem was he didn't have the stamina like some 300-pounders like a Nikolai Volkov or Gorilla Monsoon did. Because, for Monsoon to go 70 minutes, and I believe there was another show that he and Bruno worked outside. Maybe it was that 70-minute where they were actually licking each other to get the salt content because they were so dehydrated.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and it makes sense because I had it happen to me one time in my life, and you'll never forget it. When you get dehydrated, you start to lose consciousness. It's like, it's bad shit. So it's like, okay, we're going to do whatever we need to do to get through this. So I'd say, let's see, we're almost, oh my God, a half hour into the show. We're not rushing it. We're going to do this right with Bruno. I'm figuring 2 weeks is going to have to cover Bruno without a doubt. So that pretty much covers the early part of Bruno, the 60s. But, the Calhoun angle, I think we brought it up before, but it bears repeating. Bruno wasn't champion at the time. Or was he? Yeah, he was champion.
He was? Okay.
Well, there was another story I heard, though, where he was bragging because Capital Wrestling didn't want to push it too much at the time. But Bruno said, I know I can lift Calhoun. Not like, but I can get him off the mat. And then it was enough controversy and legitimate letters written, not like some of the bullshit Vince used to say in the first hour of a taping. Oh, we got a lot of cards and letters last week. And it's like he's into the second hour of the taping. But anyway, Bruno, you see him lift Calhoun up. But I heard Bruno speak one time, and he said, somebody challenged him. It's like, how come you don't wrestle Strongbow? Somebody that is like, he's undefeated. And Bruno said, well, look, promoters are in the business to make money. And when you have two guys that are, he didn't use any terms that the business uses, but he said you have two good guys, people that are not rule breakers. It's not good box office. They want to see somebody go out there and, really tear into each other.
Good versus evil.
That's it. And some people say it's a soap opera. Well, it's got to be a fucking soap opera. Otherwise, you're looking at two guys in their underwear fighting. Who gives a shit?
Right.
It's got to have a storyline to it. But I think, in my opinion, the sincerity of Bruno is what made him so popular. Yeah, his strength was legendary. No question about that. But you could feel it when he would do a promo. And that was really him speaking. He never came out and screamed and hollered. He never had to cuss or do anything like that. Not that anybody ever did back in the 60s and the early 70s and even any part of the 70s. But he came out and he had that silent killer aspect. It's like, I don't have to get out here and scream and holler. And he was right. I'll do the talking inside that ring. And by God, he certainly did it. How many times? But when you look at this schedule that he was maintaining, okay, and then we get into the famous match. Let's jump ahead to 1971 with Ivan Koloff. Now, at this point, Bruno's been carrying the belt since May 17th of 63. And it's like he's running all over the place. He's doing all kinds of appearances. Plus, he had Pittsburgh as well, which was its own entity. Pittsburgh wasn't part of Capital Wrestling at that time.
Well, and Nikita, for a while there, wasn't he? Because didn't he make a promise to Mr. Tony that he had to go to Toronto a couple of times a month? So besides schlepping all over the East Coast, he had to go back to Toronto twice a month.
Benny, this is why we work so well together. You bring up a good point. Now, he was blackballed for a while, Bruno was. And he blamed Buddy Rogers and the McMahons, Sr. at the time. And he said I hate to give a black eye to Baltimore, but that was the city that it occurred in. And he was, unknown to him, scheduled to wrestle. And he didn't show up. See, people, this is where it really gets, where I call it true fiction, because the State Athletic Commission, if you remember our Dr. Frank interview, they don't play games. I had to be licensed as a manager, as a wrestler, even as a second. Sometimes you had to have a second license. Anybody that was going to be around that ring had to be regulated. Meaning, if you're out here, if you do something we don't approve of, we'll fine you or prosecute you. And New York was very, very strict. So anyway, this happens in Baltimore, where for whatever reason, I know Bruno and Rogers, that's legitimate. They did not like each other at all. Yeah. Even though, remember the famous picture where they got together, or it was a video and they shook hands? I think it was in Atlantic City or something. And it's like, blah, blah, blah. Okay, shake hands, It's like, fine, whatever. They got all these cameras around. I have to behave myself. So anyway, Bruno was scheduled to wrestle. He didn't appear. So Maryland State Athletic Commission suspends his license. And then it's like Bruno says, I'm getting phone calls. Hey, don't show up at these certain bookings because your license is suspended. You can't work without the license. Just like you can't drive without a driver's license. You cannot wrestle without a wrestling license. And again, like Dr. Frank said, you get an examination before you go out there. You don't just walk in the door and put your bag down. The indies do it too, if it's done properly. If somebody's not having you examined and have a doctor on site, beware. Then you really are like walking around in the dark. And it's not a good situation at all. So, yeah, Bruno got suspended. And what Benny just brought up, absolutely spot on, without a doubt. Frank Tunney said, you know what, kid, come on up here. We'll put you to work. They don't have any control over what goes on in Canada. And that's when Bruno started making a big name for himself. And then it was like, huh, holy shit. I think maybe we fucked up a little bit here. So then, here comes the peace pipe. Oh, Bruno, Bruno's like, oh, yeah, yeah. So now you want to talk to me. How about that? So, but Bruno being the guy, the class act that he was, he never forgot Frank Tunney. And I think, what was it, bi-monthly he would go every 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And it was like,
he did that for years, supposedly.
Well, jump ahead just a little bit with the Larry Zbyszko angle. That was not bullshit. I mean, it was like he only had a couple of days off a month. I mean, every month. That's not like baseball where after September 30th, unless you're in the playoffs and World Series, you got a break until spring training or football.
Spring, right? Yeah.
But at wrestling, you're never off. You're always working. So it was like, and you're the champion. I know people are paying to see you. So Bruno definitely, it was like, man, oh man. So it was like, all right, what they did was before the Koloff match, he wrestled in Pittsburgh the Friday before the Monday night in Madison Square Garden. And George Steele and Baron Cicluna were in a tag match against Bruno and DiNucci. Bruno gets hit with a chair by George Steele, and his shoulder was separated. Because, Benny, you told the story well one time, or it was Hank. Remember when we had Hank Klimkowski?
Yes.
And Bruno's doctor, what's his name?
Louis Civicaris.
That's it.
Yeah.
Same doctor. He made an appearance that Saturday on Studio Wrestling and said, Bruno, please don't appear in the Garden Monday night. It's against my wishes. It's not going to be good for your body. And Bruno said, well, the people are counting on me. And Koloff has been in a bitter foe for years. And they had wrestled the year before. And it's like, I have to face him. So it's like, okay. So he did. And we know what happened. He gave up the belt. But in the reality of the true fiction of wrestling, Bruno needed a break physically, mentally. And look, we all have been down that marriage road. I don't know anything about it. I'm not going to profess to, but sometimes, it can be a pain in the ass and it's tough. If you're not home, if your relationship is over the phone, in those days, there was no flip phone or no cell phone. You had to find the phone booth.
Payphone or hotel room phone, yeah.
Yeah, and you had to keep feeding quarters in, and it was like, son of a bitch, it's expensive. It's tough. It's it's a hard life to live. So he just needed to take a break. So, okay, that night he drops the belt to Koloff, and they decide that Pedro Morales is the guy to carry the company. And I mean, that's what the champion does. He carries the company. That's why when people get on the horse about Bob Backlund, it's like, no, it's nothing to do with any kind of bullshit promise that anybody made to anybody. If you're not drawing and you're not filling the cash box, they're going to shoot you out of a cannon. You'll be done. Just like our friend Ken Patera, his career almost ended because of a bad storm in New York City on his first appearance with Bruno. And it was like, this ain't going to work. They had the 3 matches signed, and the old man said, he's done, Bruno. And Bruno's like, no, it's the weather. The rails are frozen. It's got nothing to do with him. Just wait. Come back next month. And next month they were full. And thank God, because look at our Ken Patera. We would have been without him.
Right.
So, okay, Bruno gives the big rub to Pedro Morales on the February the 8th card where Morales beats Koloff. Bruno comes in the ring, puts the belt around him. They did everything but kiss him. Like, thank you. I need a break. Take this. Please take it. And off he goes. Now he can relax. He didn't retire completely. He just took a break.
He picked his spots.
Yeah, he's picking his spots. He can do this. He can do that. Everything is fine. Bruno's doing what Bruno wants to do. And it worked out beautifully. Then the Federation they're watching the cash box awfully close. They asked Bruno come back. What I referenced, September the 30th of 1972, was the first Shea Stadium, the Shea Showdown, they called it, which was, some people call it the Shea Snooze Fest, because it's like just what we described earlier. Even though the setup was Tanaka and Fuji, the setup was, Bruno and Pedro are a tag team, and then they're both blinded by the salt, and they start swinging blindly, and then they're like, oh, then they're mad at each other, and blah blah blah. Everybody's accusing each other, and so they set up the Shea match, and they didn't go out there like Bruno would do with George Steele or Waldo Von Erich. It's like, no, it was pretty much a scientific encounter, and it's like, that's just snoozeroo. And we've said it a couple of times before. I've heard George Steele say he bet Ernie Ladd or he bet Monsoon that he could get out to the ring. But I also heard the old man said, get out there and save this fucking snooze fest, this funeral, because, I mean, this is just like death. So who else would be better than the natural enemy of Pedro and Bruno, George Steele? And it was great because the police put the billy club around his throat. That's the famous shot that you always see. Because I'll tell you, from my days in the police department, the home plate, the crew chief umpire, he tells you can't get involved. That there's a fight on the field, and those fights are not bullshit. They're out there, they're going crazy. They're going wild on each other, and the police stand by unless the crew chief of the umpire says, "Okay, intervene." Without really getting too violent with anybody. But it's like, nobody's going to put a billy club around your throat or anything like that. Like, come on, that's bullshit. Nightstick billy club. We call it nightstick in Baltimore. But most people know what is a billy club. But it's like, no, I think that was staged because the match was dying. But before that, and here's another piece of Bruno's character, where Blackjack Mulligan, remember when he was stabbed in Boston?
Yes.
On that May 15th card. He was like one of Pedro's first challengers, and the Wizard's first protege before the Wizard had all the gimmick on. He was just there in a suit, but we never knew him as anything other than the Grand Wizard. So it was like, that's great. So Bruno, trying to help his friend Blackjack Mulligan, who's trying to recover from, I mean, they don't have a pension plan or medical coverage. So it's like, all right, what are we going to do here? Because poor Blackjack, he hasn't been getting any kind of, I guess, workman's comp, but you know what that's like. That doesn't cover much. So Bruno they said, okay, put me in the ring with him. So they did a quickie, a 1 minute, and literally 1 minute match. And Blackjack Mulligan, Bruno beats him, but he got, it was like a co-main event. So you got a main event payday, which there are different cuts of the gate for whatever match you're in. If you're the main event, you're going to get a bigger piece of that pie. If you're the prelim, well, you're going to get your basic pay out of that. Kind of like an actor, extras they throw you a little bone here, but then the higher up you go, the higher your importance, the better your pay is going to be, which only stands to make sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
So, Bruno, again, he did a solid there for Blackjack Mulligan, who, it's like, my God, who would have expected that kind of a situation to occur? But then again, as we say, when it was real, people believed. And Bruno, I know, like in Baltimore, when you did damage to Bruno, you were doing damage to a family member. It wasn't like we're just watching a wrestling match. We're actually experiencing what we see in the ring and on television. I mean, you think about it, Benny. Television, I mean, what the hell was it? 50 minutes when you broke it all down? The commercials, the intro, the promo that's inserted in the middle of the card. So, it's an infomercial to promote what's coming up. So basically, you had 50 minutes. That was it.
Right.
What the hell do they have today? 3 hours? And most of it, from
Yeah,
what
they
I'm
probably
told.
wrestle for about 30 minutes of that 180 minutes.
Not long ago, somebody said it. And at one time, Bruno even said it because he said, I don't watch that stuff anymore. He said, no disrespect, but I can't. It's so different. And it's like somebody one time said, one day it's just going to be all talk and nobody's going to be wrestling. And we're almost there, I think.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
We had kooky characters, without a doubt, through the years. And Bruno had to deal with them, and he always would. But by 1973, we were starting to see a big decline in the gates. Well, they were, not we. We were still going, but we, the fans. But the office was starting to see a pretty significant decline in what the house gates were. So they start drawing Bruno back in. And, let's try it out. Try it out a couple different cities. And sure enough, when Bruno would appear, all of a sudden, you got yourself a sellout. Now you got to ask, is it because we have, you hadn't seen Bruno in a while, or is it because, you know, Pedro's not the draw that Bruno was? And it's like, I think it's a little of both. But no disrespect to Pedro, we were behind him, we loved him, but you're not Bruno. And in certain cities like a Boston, it just wasn't going to do. They wanted Bruno. Baltimore, again, they had to have Bobo carry this late spring and early summer part of 1973, and they're starting to sneak Bruno in. But Bruno's actually running. He owned, I believe, Pittsburgh, the territory at that time, still not part of Capital Wrestling, which was what the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And by the way, I was a clerk in a insurance company back in 1977 and 78, and I saw the bonds come through for Capital Wrestling Corporation. And it's legitimate. I mean, you have to have the insurance for the building, for the workers. You had to carry workman's comp.
Sure.
So it's like, and it was Capital Wrestling Corporation. Vince McMahon was the president. Willie Gilzenberg, when he was still alive, was one of the main officers. Phil Zacco and Arnold Skolin and Monsoon. So it was like, this is a business. It's not some horseshit where they just threw that name up there, Worldwide Wrestling Federation. It's kind of like the gimmick catch name, but the true operating company was Capital Wrestling Corporation. So Bruno's handling Pittsburgh. I think he was called the Pittsburgh Wrestling Club, was what his company was. He's working that. And then, from my understanding, Senior and Junior, they start courting Bruno. And then they started to basically stalk him. And it's like, Bruno, we need you to come back. And it's like, man, are you crazy? It's like, he's happy. He's loving life. He's working his own schedule. He's in Indianapolis as well.
Yeah.
He's got he's got a damn good program going with Dick the Bruiser. And in fact, when the Valiants came to be on September the 7th of 73 in Pittsburgh, that story we told a couple of times. I'll tell it one more quick time, where John L. Sullivan and Jimmy Valiant, they wrestled Danucci and I believe Parisi. They get them over. It was like, let's test them out, because the Bear Man got the message. Bobby Heenan's idea. Bobby the Brain. No bullshit. He was Bobby the Brain because he wanted to get out of Chicago and he was going somewhere else. So he said I think, he wanted to get away from no heat or anything like that, but he was leaving Dick the Bruiser and trying to go in with Vern Gagne up in the AWA. It's like, look, get a hold of Bearman and find out that kid's name that was working in Detroit a couple of times, and I think he'd be a good fit with Jimmy Valiant as a team. So Bearman gets the word to Dick the Bruiser, and he says, all right, I'll be in Pittsburgh on the 7th of September. Send him down, and we'll match it up there. And boom, it clicked. So Bruno finally gives in and says, okay, I'll come back. But I mean, he's wrestling, as I said, 3 territories basically. Pittsburgh. Now he's going to be back full time with the Capital Wrestling Corporation, and he was still doing shots for the Sheik up in Detroit. So it's like, man, because I tell you, if you look back at the match with Stasiak, and unfortunately, our good friend Rocky Raymond, who I got a lot of great 8mm footage from over the years, he was taping the match at the Garden with Stasiak. And as he was changing the camera, it's like the pin occurs. It's like, oh my God, that was gold in your hand, man. Nobody has that. Nobody ever had a copy of that match. But the crying shame is there were a couple of damn prelims that he taped almost the whole friggin' thing earlier. It's like, if you had mice at that with that shit, then you would have had this match. But whatever, it is what it is. We always accept what we get. So, okay, Bruno, but he's standing there, and I got a still picture of this, and he's looking at the belt, and it's kind of like, what the hell did I just do? I was like, please, somebody take this thing from me. But it's like, all right, he's going to rescue all of the fans in the Northeast, and he's going to be Bruno Sammartino again. It's like, my God, it had to be tough. And then when you think about what was coming, what awaited him, not that far into the future, what a mistake. I mean, we were happy for it, but for Bruno, it was tough. So anyway.
Well, he did, Nikita, correct me if I'm wrong, though. One of the deals he made with the McMahons was, well, I guess he made a couple. I think he was going to get like a percentage of the gate for certain shows. And I believe he was only going to work like the major venues instead of working everything. That was the deal he supposedly made. And it was for 1 year, right?
Well, it was not, I don't know about 1 year, but it was not going to be like a forever deal like the last time. 7.5 years. No. I can't do 7.5 again. That please, not that. Couple of years at best. Start looking for somebody.
Yeah, they were supposed to start grooming somebody.
Yeah, fill my shoes quick. But I mean, it's like I think you're right about appearing. He wasn't going to hit like Zembo Temple Mosque or Witchies or anything like that.
Right.
No, you're going to have to make it without me. But here's what I wrote down doing the research for our wonderful family out there that follows us. He was he beats Monsoon shit. He beats Stasiak on the 10th at the Garden. So then that was the Garden Monday night. Friday, he's in Pittsburgh against the Sheik, and he wins by disqualification. Eddie Crutchman, the manager, if anybody remembers that name, jumped into the ring while Bruno had a bear hug on the Sheik and broke it up. Then on the 26th of December, day after Christmas, he beats Johnny in Indianapolis. So I don't have the facts on this. I can only assume that after that match, it was like, okay, you beat me. Now, how about you and with your goofy partner there, try to take on Jimmy and I, Dick the Bruiser. So here we go, people. Bear with me. On January the 5th of 74 now, 8,000 people file into the Indianapolis Expo Center. The Valiants beat Bruno and the Bruiser to win the tag team championship. Bruno and Bruiser had previously won. How? I don't know. I don't know all of that history. I don't have any way to verify Indianapolis. Only that they were champions. And then that night, Jimmy and Johnny win the belts. And it's like, yeah, because Dick the Bruiser, I mean, he was a big name. Remember, he was part of the big riot in the Garden with Rocca and who was it? Dr. Jerry Graham,
Miguel Perez, I think, was
and
Rocky
Miguel
Sport.
Perez, and it was like that kind of got him barred for life. That's why we never did see Dick the Bruiser back in New York City after
But
all of
that
that.
was his territory, the WWA. Him and Wilbur Snyder owned it, and he always booked himself on top.
Sure, but this is a guy. He's got a brain for the wrestling business, like we talk about all of these other people, like a Pat Patterson, like we covered last week. And believe me, it's a lot more than you think. You just sit there and say, okay, well, you match A against B and D against F, and we'll see how it works out. You got to apply a logic to what's going to work and how it's going to play out, more so than just saying, put them in the ring together and let them go. So he does that. Indianapolis, January 5th. He hits the Philadelphia Arena on the 12th. This is not TV. This is when the Philly Arena was running every 2 weeks. He beat Stasiak. Sort of a rematch from the Garden, because they never had a return match at Madison Square Garden until 1976, Bruno and Stasiak. He does TV on the 19th. He beats a guy named Mr. X. Then he runs up to Boston, beats Stasiak again. The 25th of January, back to Indianapolis against the Valiants. And they're drawing 8,000 people, which it could be a full house, because I'm not sure of this building set up there with the Indianapolis Expo Center. I don't know how that worked. But then on the 26th, he's back in Detroit against the Valiants, against Bruno and Bruiser, doing the favor for the Sheik. And see, these people in the wrestling business, other than the promoters, and even the promoters, they did work together and trade talent before the big takeover by Vince Jr. in 1984, when it was like he cut everybody off. We suffered as fans, not just the goofy cartoon angles, but then it was like this trading of talent ceased to exist. And then all you could do was turn people back from face to heel. And then it got old after a while. And it was like, it was the same old. But then they tried to take, like, when they made Hogan a champion. It's like you didn't get Hogan every month, like they did with Andre. We didn't get Andre every month.
No.
He was shared throughout the country, even though I believe Vince Sr. was his booker or manager. Frank Valois technically was Andre's manager, but Vince Sr. did a lot of the.
Booked him, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get the guy paid. Valois, you can look at the paperwork and all that bullshit, make sure he's happy, but I'm the guy that's going to make sure he makes the big money. So it worked out pretty good. So then here they go. Now, that was Detroit. Then he hits February, Oil City, Pennsylvania. Him and Dominic beat Kowalski and Waldo Von Erich. Now, that was Bruno's promotion that they were doing that for.
Okay.
Oil City, Pennsylvania.
Oil City, yeah. All right.
What a name. But that's up there in the boondocks. Then February the 4th, Nassau County Coliseum, Veterans Memorial, opens the doors. Bruno against Stasiak. Now that they could announce as, and I've seen the advertisement for it. It wasn't spoken, but I didn't hear the TV promos. That would have probably been like the rematch from the Garden. Because, it's still in New York, Long Island. It usually played out, especially when Superstar was champion. And you just didn't have enough. I mean, there was just so many people you could get in the building. You had so many dates. So if you didn't get a match with Superstar in the Garden, you'd go up to Long Island at Nassau County Coliseum, like Chief did, Tony Gurria, Larry, Calhoun, a couple other people. My Via did too, but he got the Garden as well. But it was like, it's close enough. It's a damn good size.
Yeah.
Yeah, good size building. So the payday is going to be great.
Absolutely.
You're not going to be cheated out of anything. I mean, it's not anything to be ashamed of. You're in Nassau. That's fine. In New York City. So, and if anybody, did you ever see the movie Saturday Night Fever?
Oh, absolutely. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, we love it too. But it's like when they get on that Belt Parkway, it's like, oh my God, not that Belt Parkway. Ooh, I hate that thing.
Drove on that many times.
I spent a month there one day. It's like, oh my God, was thing ever end? So there they go. Bruno really was not. He hit Baltimore with against Don Leo Jonathan. He's starting to become our champion again. We're getting him on a regular basis. And this is where I give credit to Pedro Morales. Pedro didn't disappear. He hung around until 75, like mid 75. And it was like, well, a lot of people may have got a case of the ass over it and said, well, fuck you. If you don't want me anymore as champion, I'm leaving. Pack my shit and hit the road. Because before Pedro dropped the belt, I saw his last successful title defense in Baltimore on November the 28th. He beat Tanaka, who won a battle royal. He was supposed to wrestle that Friday night in Pittsburgh for Bruno, and he didn't show up. And the next day he was in Philadelphia with Stasiak and lost it on that December the 1st. So it was kind of like you have to wonder, because Pedro and Bruno were always very close. He definitely wouldn't want to hurt Bruno in any way, but you're a human. You feel certain things, betrayal being one. Pedro bled for the company. He traveled. He
did everything. He was a company man.
Yeah, busy a schedule as anybody. And then you pull the rug out from under me. It's like, what the fuck's up with that? But nevertheless, there you go. So as we're going through 74, early part, Bruno and Bob Ellis draw with the Valiants in Detroit. So he's still helping his friend, the Sheik, back down to Philly against Larry Hennig. Then on March 1st, he goes to St. Louis and beats Dr. Bill Miller. Anybody remember that name?
Yeah, he won the AWA World Heavyweight Championship as Mr. M under a mask.
Now,
I think
for those, and I've heard it said by Ric Flair and a couple others that, Bruno, he never made it any other territories. Benny, what happened in San Francisco?
Yeah, he raced Stevens 2 out of 3 falls, and at the Cow Palace, huge crowd, and he put Stevens over. And there was a big controversy surrounding that match. Was Stevens the champion? Because they each won. I think Bruno won with a bear hug. Ray won with his bombs away. So he pinned Bruno clean, and then he won the 3rd fall by, I believe, a count out.
Yes,
and he got his hand raised at the end.
Right. So, and Bruno, you got to give him credit. It's like, okay, put you over big time in your territory. No, but see, people, you got to remember, in those days with no internet, if it wasn't in a wrestling magazine or somebody didn't call you on the phone, you didn't know what the hell was going on. The sheets were not even hot yet, the newsletters or anything like that. It was all
the magazines,
through the wrestling magazines. And a lot of times you were getting goofy bullshit stories of them. The Ring, which I think was the best wrestling magazine that was out there, because they would list right down the line times of the match,
the results, right? Yeah.
The results and a little description of what happened. And it's like, that's something you can trust and you look forward to, because it's like, this is going to tell you what's really happening out there in these other territories. Otherwise, you're not going to know. Because it's funny, listen to this. In March, March 1st, he's in St. Louis and beats Bill Miller. On the 2nd, he goes to Chicago with the Bruiser, goes to a no contest with the Valiants, but superstar Billy Graham beats Ken Patero on that same card. How about that?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that was a early and a very young Ken Patera, and he started out with Gagne's school along with Chris Taylor, Ric Flair.
72, yeah.
Yeah, so many other people. So it's like, all right, Ken Patera, he's starting to get his wings under him. And
so now Bruno's working, I'm assuming St. Louis was for Sam Mushnick. So he's working Mushnick, Sheik, Bruiser, and So he's working 4 different territories.
You can add another territory. There you go.
Yeah.
And I know he must have had a relationship with Mushnick because years later in 81 or 82, actually, Bruno tried to run that, what was it, IWA, and Mushnick was part of it. And Bruno with Mike Mittman, the timekeeper at the
Yes.
Hamburg Arena. And, so apparently they stayed close through the years. So here you go. Now, on March the 4th, a young Nikolai Volkov goes 53 minutes with Bruno. Now, that was the new Garden, and it was the first time anybody went close to an hour with Bruno Sammartino. Freddie Blassie's the manager. So it's like, wow. And of course, Nikolai comes back with a full head of hair, so you don't have any inkling that he was a Mongol from 1970. Did I ever catch on in the early days? No.
Oh,
It
I didn't
wasn't.
either. No.
No, it wasn't until like when he returned in 76, and it was like when he wore the furs, 'cause he didn't wear the furs in 74, and it was the fur, and it was like, wait a minute. I'll be son of a bitch. Look at some of those pictures. And then you put them together. It's like, I think that was Nikolai, right? Of course, we didn't think back then that you could have a double identity like Batman, but you did. So then Larry Hennig comes in. But get this, in Weirton, West Virginia, Weirton, at the Millsap Community Center on March the 8th of 74, here he is with Kowalski again. And that's probably Bruno's promotion. West Virginia would have encompassed some of that Pittsburgh and other area. Because then they went to Newcastle, Pennsylvania at the Field House on March 5th. Bruno and Danucci against Kowalski and George Steele. What a combination. I don't know which is worse, Kowalski and Von Erich or Kowalski and Steele.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my God. So after that, 74, then they decided, you know what? Pittsburgh is going to merge with the Capital Wrestling Corporation because a lot of guys would travel through, like Saito. He was wrestling in Pittsburgh with Bruno Mosca before he hit the Fed, and other people that years later we would see, and it's like, holy shit, you didn't know, again, you didn't know what was going on. There was no way to have this connection. You move your mouse or cursor all over the board, you click on something. We didn't have any of that shit back then. So 74 was when I think one of the greatest tag teams in the history of professional wrestling began, when the Chief and Bruno got together. And that basically, the first match they had was with Freddie Blassie. His final match, June 24th of 74, in the Garden, with teaming with his protege, Nikolai Volkov. And it was like Bruno pinned Freddie to get the win for that team. It was 2 out of 3. And it was like, that's appropriate because Bruno and Fred Blassie, it's like, wow, from the 60s, I mean, that was all you could ask for. And it was money in the bank. The promoters, all they had to do was here, write down those names here. Blassie against Sammartino, sign that match. Bruno against Von Erich, send it in. And
the funny thing, Blassie, I think, was 55, but he looked 55 20 years before that.
Yeah, Freddie always looked like shit. He was older looking, but his knees were a mess. And the rest of, I mean, one time it was Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. And they did a special in 1984, and it was called It's Your Turn, Lehigh Valley. And Vince came out, and he brought Piper, Freddie, Lou Albano. Oh, my God, Lou was absolutely insane, but, I mean, it was worth gold. So Vince said, Mr. Blassie, because the girl that was running the show, she said, well, a lot of people say this is fake. And he's like, Vince kind of laughed. He said, well, Mr. Blassie, would you like to address that comment? He said, wow, what do you want me to say? He's like, well, can you run down the list of injuries you've suffered through the years? He said, how much time do we have? And it's like, he started to rattle it off. He said, I can't fully extend my arms, from different injuries through the years, hands, knees. He had like 8 knee operations. He had plastic knees without a doubt. I was cut in Boston. Somebody threw an egg, hit him. Nikolai was in the ring with him when it happened. They threw a hard-boiled egg and it cut his
Ooh,
cornea,
damn.
blind and left eye. Then they used that for a Tollus angle in L.A. because Freddie was a face out there, and it's like,
Right.
oh my God, who the hell would imagine that? But it was like, okay, Vince Jr. loved Freddie without a doubt because and we're going to do a Heroes of Wrestling show coming up in a couple of weeks, right around that October 10th anniversary, when Lou Albano was out there because he was supposed to be the commissioner. Nikolai and I they had a big spread out there. It was Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. So we're having dinner with Lou, and Nikolai said, "You talked to Freddie?" He's like, "No, because they pay his." Or no, actually, let me back up. It wasn't that. We saw Freddie in Long Island at an autograph show, and he said, "You talked to Bruno," and he said, "I can't." He said, "Because they pay my phone bill. They supplement a lot of. They took real good care of Freddie." So he said, "I can't call Bruno because they get the phone bill. I don't get it. They get it and pay it. And if they saw that number, and believe me, it'd be like a neon sign. That'd be the end of that shit." So, yeah, the illusion of Freddie Blassie and money was no illusion. Freddie never met a buck he didn't love. A lot like me and many others, but
Oh
you
yeah.
got to have the money. It's not greed, but if you don't have it in your pocket, you're fucked. That's the way life
Back to
runs.
life. Yep.
Jeez. Well, Benny, you were a bill collector, right? And used to make the calls.
I was I managed $50 million worth of the government's money at one time here in Florida, and I also and I later when I kind of was winding down my career, I did a few years of collections. Absolutely.
So then you heard the stories, and I guess
Oh
people
yeah.
called you a bastard and everything else under the
Well,
sun.
it's really funny when you do that. You develop a built-in polygraph. You really get a very good sense of who's being square with you or not.
Like police. That's it. You
Yep.
could look for 2 seconds and say, "You're full of fucking shit."
Right.
You, I
Exactly.
believe. But so 74, we got the Valiant brothers, and I don't have verification. Sal Corrente may be able to go deeper into this, but I would say Bruno was, he wrestled Harley Race in St. Louis. Who said that?
Greg Barry. Also, he said
Greg is good. Cleveland. Yeah, sure. And Bruno was always in demand. He would definitely, I've heard Killer Kowalski called the Babe Ruth of wrestling, but I'd say Bruno probably was, without a doubt. You
Well, how
want
many
a
trips to
sellout?
Japan, Australia?
Oh, against Baba, man, it's like, holy shit, Bruno, it was just like, and, not to be like a lot of people get goofy with this racist and all this other stuff. When we went to Japan, our guys, they were the heels. The Japanese were the faces. A lot of times it was always the reverse. Bruno, I don't know. I haven't seen any of his Japan matches. I'd love to get a hold of some, but I've never seen any. So I don't know if he was received as a face or a heel in Japan. I'd like to find out more
I
about that.
thought I saw a YouTube match with him and Baba, and he was, he was trying to give the impression that he was a heel, but they wrestled a very clean match. Bruno didn't wrestle as a heel, but I guess, nobody's going to cheer against Baba in Japan, right?
No. And look at what a weird looking guy that was, but he was powerful. See that ligament strength again. This guy was tall. He was almost 7 foot himself, but he looked like a string bean. His arms, hung off the side of him. Patero used to call it pipe cleaner arms. And it was like, yeah, but if those pipe cleaner arms wrapped around you, you'll never get out of them. And, it was a nice setup there. Bruno, and I think he probably put the buzz in the old man's ear. You got to get these Valiant brothers here. They're just like on fire. And then when they matched Lou Albano with them, there you go. There's your box office gold. You can just like write checks all day long. You're fine. And again, true fiction. Lou Albano said, I purchased the Valiant Brothers contract from Bobby Heenan. And it's like, that's cool. At the time, we didn't know what the hell was going on, but It made good sense, and it worked. But true fiction may sound stupid to some, but it's like in wrestling, it's the rule. It's just the way it works out. Again, if you turn these guys loose on each other, they'd cripple one another and end up in the hospital. But it's like, hey, I got to work with you. It's kind of like two lovers involved with S&M or some kind of sexual thing. It's like you got to have a safe word. And in wrestling, it's the same thing. They'll pinch the arm. It's like, ease off. You're starting to break my fucking arm here. Or you get a little bit too wild with your punches. So it's like all of this stuff, it all comes into play. So we get the Valiant brothers. So what's the most natural team? Strongbow and Bruno, right? The month before the setup, Bruno wrestles Tolis. I don't know if there was any heat there. I believe it was July 22nd of 74. And Bruno slaps the over-the-shoulder backbreaker on Tolis. We hadn't seen that since Buddy Rogers and the Old Garden. And I don't know if that was a message like, you don't fucking belong here, pal. I don't know. I'm repeating it. But to me, it looked like Bruno beat this guy and like it's yesterday's garbage. Get him out of here. There's a lot of people that thought Tolis wrote the book. I don't know. I didn't get him for some.
Evan's a huge John Tolis fan.
Oh my God, Evan probably want to punch me in the face if he heard that. But it's like, and we're close friends. But it's like I didn't get Tolis. He didn't even have a wrestler body. He had Joe Blow body. If you looked at him,
he worked in California, but I mean, and I guess him and his brother Chris were over in New York in the early '60s as a tag team, right?
I guess. Yeah. I'm not up on the '60s.
But I got the angle with him and Blassie in California. That worked.
Yes.
But yeah, he didn't translate to New York in the '70s anyway.
Nah. So anyway, Bruno kills him, and then Chief and then Calhoun are wrestling the Valiants. So it ends up with Calhoun. He's bloodied. He can't continue. So the Valiants are just tearing the Chief's ass now. They're killing him. Who hits the ring to make the save? Bruno. So that sets up the next month. It's August. They're going to wrestle the Valiant brothers. And that's when we get this goofy decision. They wrestled to the curfew. Again, I just bitched about this because on September the 29th in Baltimore of 79, Chief against Greg Valentine goes on last. And after they get them with all the yak, yak, yak with the introductions, they got like 7 minutes. And the bell rings, the curfew. Sometimes Maryland State Athletic Commission will waive the curfew. Most of the time they wouldn't. So it's like, well, what the fuck was that? We come and we watch Joe Turco wrestle Dennis Johnson for 20 minutes, but the Chief against Valentine is 7. It's like, come on, man, that's shit. But the psychology. Valentine was leaving the next month. The Chief was going to be leaving. They had already murdered each other at the Garden in Philadelphia and other places. Like, it was just let's go through the motions thing and get out of here. So anyway, the ending of the Valiants against Bruno and Chief was that when it went to the bell, the referee decided in favor of Strongbow and Sammartino, but the ringside judges, which were members of the State Athletic Commission in New York, decided for the Valiants. And it's like, well, you're not going to have a title change hands like that. Forget it. So no show in September. October the 4th, I believe, unless I'm wrong. I'll double check later. They have their rematch. But it was a Monday night, and here we go again. Sports in New York. The Jets were playing the Dolphins. Yeah, it's early in the season, but it was a big game because, they were both in the Eastern Division of the NFL. The NFC. So they were a little bit worried, the office. It's like, what the fuck's going to happen? Is most of New York going to stay home and watch the football game, or are they coming to Madison Square Garden? Well, you know the answer. The Felt Forum was even sold out. They wanted to see Bruno and Chief against the Valiant brothers in the return match. And they were not disappointed. Of course, it was blood galore, and the match was stopped, so the Valiants kept the belts. but the company was able to breathe a sigh of relief because they had another sellout on their hands. Unfortunately, and they did come back a third time, but as we're moving along, I don't want to overload everybody. I think we ought to stop at 74. We got a couple more things to plug in there, but I don't want to overload. So they did come back in 75. We'll get into that next time. But in 74, Kowalski shows up for his last run as Killer Kowalski. And they had a hell of a match on April the 29th of 74. And then they had a return match in May. But that April the 29th match, you got everything Kowalski had to offer. He was doing everything under the sun. Bruno was bloodied. And this is where we talk about, we think Hogan got the idea when Bruno would do his comeback with that crouch, and he would make that slow crab walk towards
the crab, yeah.
And Bruno's bloody and Kowalski, and give Walter all the fucking credit in the world. He looked like he ate a jelly sandwich from biting Bruno's head. He's got blood all over his mouth. I mean, that's a pro. It's like, he ain't worried about it. Of course, there was no AIDS or any of that bullshit back then. So it was like, but still, you're biting a man's head that's bloody. You're diving into the deep end of the pool. God bless you. So here comes Bruno making the crouch. And then when he just goes, rah, and lets loose and starts swinging, the garden, it just erupts. I mean, if Hollywood could harness that type of emotion, and they have with a few over the years, without a doubt, but if they could have harnessed that emotion, it's like, man, because the dressing room came out, Chief came out, Pedro, Dean Ho to separate the two. And I mean, it was just like wild. It was fantastic. And
But
this
that
is
was genuine emotion from those people. That was from total passion.
Everything thrown into the ring. Kowalski probably had to fight for his life to get back to the dressing room. I couldn't see it because the camera centered on Bruno, but it was like, that's what you want. I mean, Bruno Sammartino against Killer Kowalski. Again, if you go back to the 60s, it would be like, here, get these two, get them in the ring, and we're on our way to a sellout. And they never disappointed. Never, ever. They had strong Kobayashi they brought in 74. They called him Shoujo, which means strong in Japanese, but I called him No-Show Kobayashi because it's like, this guy just stank. And how the hell are you going to follow Tanaka and Fuji anyway? I mean,
right.
That was sad for that
the bar
guy.
Very high.
Yeah, you gave him like a quarter tank of gas and try to get him to Canada from New York. It's like, it ain't going to work. So, you had that, but it was like Bruno got to wrestle some good tag matches with Chief. Then Bobby Duncombe comes in, and I still say that was the most underrated wrestler in the history of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, because the November show with Duncombe in December, and it was like, this guy, for a 300-pounder, he had stamina. He could go, and there's no way you're going to stop him. Now, because the December the 16th show, Chief and Arion made their only appearance at the Garden together. And then the next month, actually the next day, the wheels came off the cart with the Arion. Oh, okay, hold on. We'll talk about that because that involves Bruno. But yeah, there's Bobby Duncombe. And I'll tell you what, when he came back in 1980, late 79, 1980, I take my hat off to the man. And Vince Sr., his wife was going through cancer treatments, and she was up in Boston. And they would work Duncombe's schedule around so he could drive up and be with her. And it's like, wow, now that's dedication. That's love. And you got to give the old man credit. It's like, take care of him. He's trying to be good with his wife, so let him get up there. So it was like very nice. So, Bruno's having these great matches with Duncombe, and one in particular, and it goes into 75, and I'll just touch on this briefly. Duncombe has a match with Victor Rivera. It was the night of the Greek death match, which ended the Ariane Bruno run. And I mean, Duncombe stayed move for move, hold for hold with Victor Rivera. The stamina was there. It was incredible. I call that the sleeper of the card because we had already seen the month before the Texas death match. So this one, it was like April the 14th. It was nice. Greek death match. He makes Ariane submit, but Duncombe against Victor Rivera, the shots, Victor's drop kicks were nailing Duncombe, and the shoulder tackles they were hitting each other with. It's like these guys aren't holding back. This is just great, great display. So Bruno, of course, was going to have great matches with Duncombe. But then December the 17th on television, I'm not going to go too deep into it. We covered it with Chief. Ariane and Chief are having their problems because of Kowalski when he came into the ring with the hood and he put the gimmick in his mask, and then Chief hit the ring to save his partner. And Ariane's pissed because I never lost a match. He got me disqualified. And then they were kind of like a little bit aloof, but not quite split. And then they had the match signed with the Valiants for television. And just happenstance, Bruno's there to help Vince with the color commentary with a nice white shirt on. And so Chief and Ariane, they're doing pretty good. Looks like maybe they're going to win the non-title match, of course, on television. Or no, I think it was a title match. It looked like maybe they're on their way. But then he had the sleeper on Jimmy, pushes to the ropes, mid-ring collision with Johnny. Chief accidentally bumps Ariane. He goes out of the ring, and he's pissed. He's had it. That's it. He's had enough of this fucking Indian boy. He takes a chair, whack, splits the Chief open. And even on television back then, they're showing the Chief bloody. Then Bruno hits the ring, and he's got his arms out like, why? Why would you do that? And then all of a sudden, Ariane nails Bruno. And then the Valiants chime in, and they rip Bruno's shirt off, and it's like, holy shit. Bruno's left blading in the ring. Chief is bloody. The Valiants and Ariane walk off with Lou Albano, and it's like, what did we just see?
What a shot.
That had to be, besides Zbyszko and Bruno, which we'll cover next time. And we're not just doing that to reel you back in like official on the line, but look, hour and a half, that's plenty. Otherwise, you will get tired and turn us off. But it's like, wow, what did we just witness? I mean, that had to be
Greek. I mean, that was like unimaginable.
One of the most stunning events in television history for professional wrestling, which again is the longest running infomercial in the history of television and the longest running soap opera and reality show. You pick it. It was on the Dumont network all the way back in the 50s when television, when people first were fortunate enough to have this whatever size. And remember, it used to be the centerpiece of the living room. It was a big piece of furniture with a picture tube in it, or picture tubes. There was many, but it was like
you watched while you ate dinner. The family ate dinner, and the TV set was within view.
Yeah, and it was your biggest piece of the living room next to the couch, and it was like, wow, that was entertainment personified. So it was, wow, what we saw there. And that's where we'll leave you, people, our family. Thank you again for tuning in and for giving us such, as Pedro Morales used to say, such good, strong support.
Yeah.
We love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so much. We could probably do a month's worth of shows about Bruno. I mean, it's really funny. I think it was a little bit over 11 years. It was 4,040 days, I believe. And it's so funny now you watch the current product and this guy's been champion for 187 days. Like, okay, so do that like times 25, and then you know Bruno did.
Did it ever get old?
No. I mean, I asked this. I think I asked it to Davey or Sal Corrente once when they were on Dan and Benny, that if Bruno hadn't gotten tired, and he hadn't gone home in 71, and he hadn't dropped the belt to Billy in 70, in 78. I'm sorry, 77. How long could he have been conceivably been champion? Consecutively.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't going to take the belt off him, right? I mean,
but No. Oh God, no. You're bringing in the dough, whatever you're going to say or do.
I mean, he could have went like 15 years.
That's why Bruno said, bring in the Valiants. They brought in the Valiants. Bring in Bob Duncombe. He saw Duncombe, to the best of
He
my
brought in
recollection, in Japan.
Tanaka. He discovered, I think, George Steele.
Professor Tanaka. And it was like, yeah, this is a match just made in heaven for us. I mean, you got another big bull, power lifter himself, and he does the karate, and he can the sinister Japanese back then. Sorry, people, but that's just the way it was. We weren't that far away from
Well,
the
we were
attack on
only
Pearl Harbor.
like 2 decades removed from World War II.
Yes. So it was like, it's perfect. And believe me, Professor Tanaka, who was Hawaiian, Charlie Kalani, he didn't mind making the money. It was fine. You call me whatever you want.
Right.
But he didn't have too many problems to or from the ring because he could take care of himself, as
Right.
you would see in the 80s and the Chuck Norris movies. And that's again why I say, when you see a guy like that, they couldn't even get a tie around his neck. He just wore like a jacket and the dress clothes. And it's like, when you see a big bastard like that in dress clothes next to a guy like Chuck Norris, it'd be like, Chuck Norris, I let you chop me and kick me 20 times before I come back at you. It'd be like, nice warm up. He'll kill you. He'll put you in his
Right.
pocket and sit on you, midget. Jeez, unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right, Benny, what do you think? Did we do it justice?
Yes, we did. And I want to give everybody thanks, and all the listeners, both in the live chat, on the radio, Want Radio, and also on all the different streaming platforms, because I told Nikita we're climbing the charts faster than the Wonders with that thing you do.
That's it.
Yeah, we might get a gold record out of this. But so thank you to everybody for following us. We really we enjoy your comments. We enjoy the support times a million. But you can catch us every Wednesday on the Playa Entertainment Network, as well as Want Radio. You can also catch us on iHeart, Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts. We've been heard from Trenton to Taiwan, from Sheboygan to Singapore. I think we're up to 6 continents now. So for the great Nikita Breznikov, this is Benny Scala, a.k.a. The Playa, also the Poet Laureate of the Playa Entertainment Network. And I'm going to leave you with this. Tonight we talked about my lifetime hero. The Black Demon was Tony Nero. Bruno had humility, class, and grace. No one will ever take his place. Good night, folks.
Dos Fedani, Tavares.